Hello, everyone. I'm Lana Zach. Thank you so much for joining us here on CBS News. We're counting down to the launch of Boeing Starliner spacecraft. Now, this will be the very first time that Boeing takes humans into space. I want to give you a live look at the launch pad at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. Crews are making final checks before the launch, set to take place in less than 10 minutes exactly, and we do mean exactly, at 12:25:40 Eastern. We saw just moments ago the crew access arm retraction, and earlier today, the two NASA astronauts manning this flight were seen leaving Kennedy Space Center on their way to the launch pad. You see there Sunita Sunny Williams. She's the Boeing Starliner pilot, and Barry Butch Wilmore is the commander of the flight. The mission had originally been set to launch last month, but that liftoff was postponed because of a faulty valve and a helium leak. Those issues now resolved, and the spacecraft has been cleared to fly. CBS News' John Dickerson spoke with the astronauts recently and asked them how they're feeling.
It's, of course, a little bit nerve-wracking, but at the same time, really exciting. Everybody's ready. We've trained for a long time, so I feel like we're ready. Right, Butch?
Yeah, we're ready.
They are ready, and we are as well. We have team coverage at the Kennedy Space Center, including CBS News space consultant Bill Harwood and CBS News national correspondent Manuel Bojorquez. And in just a couple of seconds, gentlemen, we are going to hear that status check for the terminal count. Manny, very quickly before that, you're there on the ground. What's the mood like?
There's a lot of excitement here. They've never gotten to this far when it comes to getting Starliner with astronauts on board ready to launch. I can look over my side here and see the countdown clock is now saying 6 minutes, 48 seconds. There's press out here, but
sorry,
also
Manny. Let's go
lining
ahead
Cape Canaveral. Yes.
Because of that, let's go ahead and listen into that status check for the terminal count briefly.
Airborne.
Right. Go.
Ground.
Go.
Facility.
Go.
RFFTS.
Go.
Flight control.
Go.
GCQ.
Go.
Op support.
Go.
Com.
Go.
Umbilicals.
Go.
Arm control.
Go.
ECS.
Go.
Redline monitor.
Go.
Quality.
Go.
Op safety manager.
Go.
ULA safety officer.
Go.
Vehicle system engineer.
Go.
Anomaly chief.
Go.
Range coordinator.
Clear to proceed.
Flight director.
Houston flight is go.
Starliner.
Starliner go.
Launch director.
You have permission to launch.
Proceeding with the count. ALC, verify T0 is set for 16:25:40 Zulu.
Verified.
All right, all systems are a go. They are ready to launch. They have resumed the countdown for T-minus 4 minutes. I'm going to go back over to Manny. Manny, you were telling us about how everyone is assembled there. Please continue.
That's right. So you've got the press assembled here, able to look at the clock, 5 minutes, 27 seconds now. But what I was going to say is earlier driving around, you could see around Cape Canaveral where people pull over next to the water, just civilians who want to get a sight at this launch. So that just gives you a sense of the excitement that's attached to this.
A lot of excitement. Bill, I'm going to bring you into the conversation as well, because not just excitement, there's a lot of money on the line as well. NASA awarded Boeing a $4.2 billion contract to build the Starliner. That was back in 2014. It was supposed to help carry astronauts to the International Space Station. It has had some setbacks since then, but it's a sizable investment from NASA. So talk to us a bit about the significance of this mission, not just for NASA, but also for the troubled Boeing company.
Yeah, it's really a two-sided coin here. It is expensive for the taxpayer. $4.2 billion. They originally hoped to have these spacecraft flying in the 2017 timeframe. They had some budget shortfalls in Congress, and then Boeing ran into a string of technical problems that has pushed the flight back to now. They've had to spend more than $1 billion of their own money to fix the problems they've encountered so far. But if all goes well today, NASA hopes to certify this spacecraft to begin operational flights next year. And that's important because NASA wants two separate crew ferry ships. In other words, one to join SpaceX's Crew Dragon to make sure they've got a way to get people to and from the space station, even if a problem grounds one of the spacecraft. So it's a big mission for Boeing. It's a big mission for NASA.
Bill, I have to say one of the highlights of my career was actually being there to see one of the last shuttle launches and covering that. But you mentioned some of the technical difficulties, obviously, with Boeing having to kick in $1.4 billion of their own funds trying to remedy some of these. I caught my breath a little bit today when we heard that there was perhaps a problem with a sensor on one of the valves. Talk to us about what was happening earlier.
Yeah, those were problems with the rocket, the Atlas V rocket, which is provided by United Launch Alliance, not by Boeing. It was a valve problem in the system that's used to keep topping off the hydrogen and oxygen in the tanks of the rocket. Turned out that was a sensor issue. They switched to a backup telemetry string, and they're okay to go. So all's good to go at this point.
That is good to hear. So, Manny, let's talk a little bit more about some of the contingency plans that are in place. There's lots, obviously, built into this launch. And despite all systems now being go, I understand that there's a final contingency plan that takes place less than 2 minutes before liftoff. Can you tell us about that?
Well, Lana, before we get to that, let me get to some breaking news that we're having now.
Please.
At 3 minutes and 50 seconds to go to launch, the countdown clock has stopped, meaning that they are scrubbing the launch. We don't exactly know at this point why they are scrubbing the launch. As you heard there, they went through all the systems. Everything seemed to be a go. But at 3 minutes, 50 seconds to go, there is a scrub of this launch. So another setback as we will try to listen in and maybe try to figure out exactly why they are not able to launch today.
Please, yes. Manny, if you want to listen to that, Bill, I'm going to head back over to you for your reaction to this breaking news that we just got live on the air from our own Manuel Bajorquez, who's there, that the countdown clock has stopped despite all systems being go. Just moments before that, the launch now looks like it's scrubbed. What can you tell us?
I'm not sure. You know, this happened right out of the blue. The countdown had been in a 4-hour holding at the T-minus 4 minute point. That was normal. That's what they planned to do. When the countdown came out at T-minus 4 minutes, it stopped 10 seconds later. So when they picked up the count, the computers obviously detected a problem somewhere. But, you know, busy talking to you and to Manny upstairs, I hadn't been able to listen in to the technical loop.
Well, you know, one of the technical things that I know that you know about is this point that the launch has to be instantaneous. When I said they are planning for a launch at specifically 12, 25, 40 seconds, there's a reason why that had to happen, and it has to do with the International Space Station. Talk to our viewers about that.
I will, but I will apologize in advance because I really want to try to find out what the problem is with the rocket today.
Arm control, deploy the crew access arm.
They're talking in the background. They're rotating the crew access arm from the launch gantry back to the rocket to be able to get the crew off the ship. No, what you're talking about with the launch time is because to catch up with the International Space Station, which is moving at 5 miles per second nearly up in Earth orbit, they have to launch right when the station's orbit is lined up with the launch pad. And that only happens twice a day, and it turns out this is when it is for today. So it's really orbital mechanics. It is rocket science, if you want to think about it that way. But these flights have to go on time.
Literally rocket science. I'm going to give you now an opportunity to listen in while we head back over to Manny. Manny, what have you been able to sort out?
Yeah, as he listens in, we are expecting to hopefully learn more, not only from the communication there from Mission Control, but also later if there is a news conference about exactly what happened here today. The clock now is set to 4 minutes. I'm not exactly sure what that means. But, you know, earlier today, as we were listening in, they did have a problem with the system they use to top off the fuel. So they continually top off the fuel on the rocket because of a fuel burn-off that happens as it's just sitting there on the launch pad. There was an issue with that system, the system that communicates with the valve that does that outside of the rocket. But they had a redundancy. They had a workaround, and they were able to do it. So there was a sense that maybe that could be a problem, but they were able to work around that earlier today. Now we're waiting to find out what the setback is for this particular launch. Now, they do have other opportunities to launch. If I'm not wrong, those would be Sunday and Monday.
Right.
But depending on what's going on here on the ground right now, if it's a bigger issue, then they may have to delay it once again. Again, this is a second attempt. They tried it in May. Here we are, June 1st. Everybody was very hopeful, and we got as close as it's gotten before to launching with astronauts on board. But for now, we're in a hold pattern, and we're still trying to figure out why.
And as our viewers can see there, the countdown clock in the lower part of the screen provided by NASA still holding at T-minus 4 minutes. And we also saw, while Manny was describing the possibility for launch being rescheduled for the next 2 days, that arm moving back into position so that the astronauts on board are able to disembark from the Starliner spacecraft. You see it moving right now there on your screen. Manny, while we're talking about the two astronauts that are on board, I'm hoping you can tell our viewers a little bit more about them.
Well, they're as experienced a crew as you can get. These are veteran NASA astronauts, the commander, Butch Wilmore, the pilot, Sonny Williams. A bit about their resume. Both former Navy pilots. Both have been on the space shuttle before it was retired. Both have served as commanders of the International Space Station. They have 11 spacewalks between them and 500 days in space between them. So talk about being experienced. Both have said that they're excited to be part of this maiden voyage of Starliner with astronauts on board, and that despite the setbacks and the last-minute delays, that they felt confident that this ship would perform as it is expected to. So when it comes to the crew, you know, they were very happy this morning getting on there, saying bye to their relatives, bye to the NASA crew and the Boeing crews that were on the ground. And this is, again, as close as they've gotten to a launch. It was, you know, tenuous when it came to the part where they actually had to seal and close the capsule because they were still having that issue with the way they were fueling the topping off the fuel tanks. There was a question, can they close it in time? You know, all of this has to be timed perfectly because it has to hit the orbit just right in order to link up with the International Space Station. I don't know if I'm hearing maybe an explanation at this point in the communication there from what's happening. If we want to listen in for another second or two, and then we can come back.
Meantime, the team is active recycling the vehicle to a good holding state so that we can prepare for our next steps. But for now,
Roger.
we are holding at T-minus 4 minutes, recycling the vehicle after a hold of our ground launch sequencer shortly after picking up terminal count for today's launch opportunity.
All right, I want to pop back over to... Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Manny.
Sorry, I was just going to say a lot of it's very technical language, so maybe if Bill has any new information, he can inform us.
Yeah, that was just what I was going to do. I know Bill Harwood has been through many launches from that very site, though this would have been the first one for Boeing. Bill, you've been trying to listen in and suss out what exactly took place today. What have you learned?
Well, we really don't know. We just heard an update from United Launch Alliance, who's the builder of the rocket. The ground launch sequencer, that's a computer that controls the terminal phase of the countdown, the final few minutes, obviously encountered a problem of some sort. It saw telemetry data that indicated trouble. We don't know what it was yet, though. The United Launch Alliance person also didn't provide any details, and so other than saying that the engineers are reviewing the data. So it's not clear. But, you know, one point, as we discussed earlier, anytime the countdown holds on one of these space station rendezvous missions, it means you're not launching that day because, as you've said before today, they have to launch right on time in order to catch up with the space station. So as soon as that hold was ordered, we knew they weren't going to space station. They've recycled the countdown to T-minus 4 minutes. That's normal because that's just a standard point where they can control everything better, but that doesn't mean they're launching today. They are not.
They are definitely not. We are waiting to see if that means, though, that they will be launching on Sunday or on Monday or at a later date altogether. Bill, while I have you, let's talk through...
We might be getting some word now. Let's see.
Let's listen.
To the NASA operations
just
manager's loop.
Recycle status.
Recycle.
Roger. SYSLC.
Yes, LC, GC-30 is ready.
Roger.
Roger.
No
As you
update there. They're
mentioned,
just talking about safing the vehicle and recycling the countdown. But
Bill, I
still
want to
waiting
ask
for
you,
word
though,
on what caused this delay.
right, as we are waiting to find out what exactly caused this delay and when this delay will be remedied, rescheduled for, we know it's not happening today. We also know that there were some other issues that we saw during the preparations for launch today. We see a live image of the two astronauts who are on board. They are waiting to disembark. One of the issues that they had were with suit fans. I don't know, Bill, if you have additional editorial information, or you can just talk to our viewers about the importance of those fans in the suits.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to listen at the same time to this launch director's loop. I don't think the fans were an issue here. They had resolved that. They have redundancy in that system. They've switched to a backup circuit. It's just a really disappointing setback because they clearly thought they were ready to go. Hang on just one second. I'm sorry.
Again, this was the ground launch sequencer, essentially the computer.
Yeah.
Roger.
This is the computer that is
Okay,
in
all
charge.
personnel going to Operation 85. OSM, LC.
OSM.
Establish the BDA roadblocks and open the flight hazard area.
Roger.
And all personnel on Channel 1 will be starting an approximate 65-minute hold at this time for flight crew egress. All systems maintain T-4 and holding configuration.
All right, Manny, the announcement we heard there was about egress. That means that the two astronauts are going to be disembarking momentarily. We continue to watch that. Bill Harwood is listening in now to NASA to find out exactly what caused this launch to be scrubbed for today and when it may be postponed for. In the meantime, Manny, I know you've also been listening in on all of this. Let's talk about a bit more about the significance of this Streamliner, of the investment that NASA has made into this program.
Yeah, not only NASA, but of course Boeing has spent more than $1 billion trying to fix the spaceship before getting to this point today. That's above the budget that they had allotted. So the essential thing for NASA here is to have redundancy. We do know that SpaceX has been able since 2020 to get people safely to the International Space Station and back. The goal was to have Boeing doing the same thing with Starliner. But 4 years later, here we are, and it's been having all kinds of setbacks and delays, including like the one you see today. And again, as we're waiting to find out exactly what the problem is, whether we can hit the next window, which opens up tomorrow, depends largely on whether it's something that maybe they can work around on the pad. But if it's something where they have to physically get in there, that becomes a whole other beast, and that is why in May it didn't become a delay where they just hit the window the next day, but became almost a month-long delay.
Right.
So all of these things really complicated, and a point to make about the automation there is that these systems are all designed that if they detect something, they will alert, and then there is a scrub. The other thing about the automation to point out that we were going to talk about before the launch got scrubbed is that just before launch, they automate the abort system. This is an automatic abort system. So if something is detected going wrong with the rocket, an automatic abort would send the capsule, the Starliner, with the astronauts safely away from the rocket before something happened. They have built all these systems to detect that. It's also manual. The astronauts can do it themselves, or mission control can do it too. So those are some of the systems that are in place, some of the redundancies that are in place. If you get closer to a launch, it just didn't happen today as we continue to try to find out exactly what the issue is, what the possible fix will be, and if they can try the next window, which opens up tomorrow, or whether it will be a more lengthy delay.
Yes, and as you said, Manny, the last time we had a scheduled launch was back on May 6th. The delay lasted nearly a month, so we have at this time, no idea exactly how long this delay will last. We do know that you and Bill Harwood will bring us that information as soon as we have it. In the meantime, let's talk a little bit more about the launch that was scheduled for May 6th. Talk to us, if you could, Manny, about why it was scrubbed, what had to be remedied, and why they felt optimistic that today was in fact going to work.
Well, the former flight that was scheduled, they found a problem with a valve on the rocket, so they scrubbed it for that. And then they discovered that there was a helium leak, I should say, in the Starliner. So they were able to remedy both problems, but the leak, they remedied by saying, essentially, look, it's a small enough leak that we don't think it's going to be a problem. We think we can safely launch even with that helium leaking out of the tank. In fact, today they said that the leak appeared to not be as bad. But those were the two reasons that it was scrubbed back in May. This isn't because it's a test flight, it's not necessarily a mission like we have seen before on the SpaceX flights, where they get the astronauts to the space station. They're there for months doing experiments and doing what they were going to do. The goal here was to safely get them to the International Space Station, where they would spend about a week. They have supplies that they're bringing up, including a water purification system that broke on the International Space Station that clearly they will not be able to get up today. And then they were going to come back down. This capsule is designed, instead of landing in the water, which it can do in an emergency, to land on land somewhere over the southwest desert of the United States. Again, that's not going to happen today, but those are all the things that they were hoping would happen to prove that they could get that full circle safely up and safely down. Boeing had said, look, if the launch goes off today without a hitch, yes, it'll be something that we applaud and are proud of, but it won't be considered a success really until they're safely back on the ground. They were hoping to have reason to celebrate because, as you know, on the commercial airline side of things, there has been scrutiny about the safety culture over at Boeing because of some highly publicized incidents, including the door plug that flew off that 737 earlier this year. So they were hoping to have something to celebrate. That doesn't mean that we won't have the opportunity to do that maybe in another day or so, but we are still waiting to get official word for why exactly this is not going to happen today.
Yes, and the key word that you said repeatedly, Manny, was safety. We are glad that if there was a question about it, that the decision was made to stop it. I also think, Manny, personally, that one of the most interesting things about this was the redundancy that's built into all these contingency plans. As you just said, the ability then for the astronauts to launch off of this if they didn't have everything up to snuff, that was actually a safety mechanism that's built in. I'm gonna go back over to Bill, though, because I believe that Bill's been listening in. He's been working his sources. He has an update for us. Bill, what can you tell us?
Yeah, they're saying that the scrub was triggered by the ground launch sequencer. That's the computer that controls the final moments of the countdown. They're saying some configuration files did not load properly when the countdown came out of that final hold at T-minus 4 minutes. Now, we don't know what the details of that are, but if it's a software problem, this might be something they can, in fact, correct quickly. They've already said they're protectively configuring the launch pad and the rocket for a possible launch attempt tomorrow if the problem can be resolved. So they're gonna shoot for that 24-hour turnaround if they can. We still haven't heard yet, though, what the nature of the problem was with the ground launch sequencer. So it may not be possible, but at least we got our fingers crossed there might be a shot at it.
Well, you know, when it comes down to needing IT to come help load the software, glad that we know more about what potentially was behind it and the possibility that both of you will rejoin me tomorrow as we try it all again. Manny Bajorquez, Bill Harwood, want to thank you both so much. We'll, of course, continue to follow the latest developments and bring you the latest on a new launch date as you see it there. The countdown clock locked at T-minus 4 minutes. We will continue to bring you updates throughout the day. Thanks for watching. I'm Lana Zach, and you are streaming CBS News 24/7.